Hello, this is Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and I'm bringing you a reading today with the Hebrunes on the topic of what is the trunk of this tree that we've been talking about. We've had some seeds and we've had some roots, and now we've got a sprout and some small trunk coming up. And to that end, we're going to pull out a deck from my bowl of decks and choose 2 cards. And we'll do 2 readings today based on what kind of sprout and trunk are we growing in this tree. So let me shuffle up and pull out one of these slips of paper. This one here. And we have the deck of the North American Animal Wisdom Oracle. Wonderful. I'll go get that. I'll be right back. And this is a new deck to me, the North American Animal Wisdom Oracle. It's 72 wild animals from Canada, United States, and Mexico. The 3 realms of land, sky, and water. And it's by Angela Raincatcher. So let's take some of these cards and shuffle them up. We're going to just pull out 2 today. Actually, pull these out of the way. And let's shuffle it up and see which 2 animals want to speak to us today with regards to a tree trunk that is coming up and establishing itself right now. There's number 1. Put that one on that side. Whoop. And there's number 2. Great. Let's see. So the first card is the black-tailed jackrabbit, an animal of the earth. And I love that it's got a little sprout on the top there, growing up. And card number 2 is the 9-banded armadillo. Nice. Another earth animal. All right, so take a moment to determine which of these 2 animals is calling to you today, whether it be jackrabbit or armadillo. I'll put the timestamps down below, and then we will do a reading on the trunk that is growing right now for you. See you in your reading. Hello, jackrabbit friends. So here's the black-tailed jackrabbit, Lepus californicus, and he is jumped into your cards today to help lead us into this reading about what trunk is being built. And I think about jackrabbit, they are fast and they are a little bit wily, hard to catch. And they live in a desert area, I believe. So interesting, because we are talking about the earth this month with regards to the trees and to Shevat. And trees sometimes have a difficult time growing in the desert, but there are animals that thrive in those environments. And perhaps you're such an animal that can thrive in an environment that's a little bit parched, a little bit harsh. So let's take a look and see what trunk is coming up for you today. I'm going to set Jackrabbit off to the side here. And we'll take the Hebrunes, shuffle them up, and we're going to pull out 5 today. We're going to start with what is at the base, what is at the root here of the trunk that's coming. Oh, we've got the Ein Sof, very nice. What is the sprout that's coming up right now? And we have the Aleph. What substantial piece is the trunk for you? We have the Resh. And let's do 2 branches. One branch is the Lamed, And the second branch is the Mem. Very nice. All right, so for those of you who chose Jackrabbit, the base of your situation here, the root of your situation, whatever it is coming up for you right now during this period of time where we're starting to see the sap rising in the tree, but those trunks and branches are bare right now, and the roots being under the ground. We have the Ein Sof, which is the blank, the unknown and the void. Something has come from nothing. There's been this rooting underground that has seemed like nothing was happening for a very long period of time. Perhaps this is the letter that represents no letter, the letter that represents eternity. So there's been an eternity of emptiness, something that's unseen, maybe like a desert where a jackrabbit lives. This infinite primordial chaos, which has very little, if anything, to be seen. So it can feel really vacant. It can feel very, very blank. And we have this time that seems timeless, this eternity that came before in the root time, where there was nothing but potential. There was potential for growth, but there was nothing to be seen. And that is what's been in the past for you, or at the root of our situation here, is this emptiness and blankness, the timelessness and the void, that deep part that seems like nothing's happening. There's no growth at all. Everything's just a desert. But there's something there that has the potential for growth. Infinite possibility, as I said, sitting there under the ground this whole time. And then the sprout comes. And in our case, we have the sprout in the form of the Aleph, which is perfect because it is the number 1. It's the very first letter. So out of the void comes the number 1. Out of the nothingness comes the somethingness. And we have the Aleph, which represents oneness, the oneness of the divine. The Yud above, which is divinity coming down from heaven. And the Yud below, which represents earth, and this Vav between, which is connection. So there's a connection between heaven and earth, and that connection is air. That connection is breath. Aleph is the mother letter of air and breath and atmosphere. And what better thing to come out of nothingness than breath? It's as if the divine has breathed into us. And that breath comes in part from the trees because we exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide with the trees. Aleph, that mother letter of air, which makes the sound ah, like a breath. So our little sprout here has been just the smallest breath. This understanding that the divine is above in heaven and the divine is below on earth, and that it connects and divides both those things. We have both connection and division, divinity and humanity, unity and multiplicity. Aleph is the number 1, but if you pronounce it with a different vowel, it becomes Elef, which means 1,000. So we have this concept of the oneness which exists in all things and the manyness that exists in the one. I think about multiplicity in terms of rabbits. They're well known for being very prolific in breeders. So you have one rabbit, but within that rabbit, multiple seeds, infinite numbers of rabbits, and they are populating the countryside, the desert, with their fertility. The Aleph is the chest and lungs in the body. And most of the names of the divine in Torah begin with Aleph. We have El, Adonai, Elohim, El Elyon. And it also is the first letter of the word Adam, Adamah, human, and earth, mud. So this earth being here, this jackrabbit, is also of the earth, but also of divinity. Both of those things, holding both those things in one hand. This idea of balancing between heaven and earth. And that's a great sprout to come out of the nothingness, that Aleph, that number 1, that oneness, and that multiplicity. And up out of that breath comes what? The Resh. The resh is the letter that begins the word rosh, which means head. It's like a birth here. We've got the nothingness, the womb perhaps, the aleph, which is the breath, and then that head gets born. And the head is the beginning of a thing. So you've got some new thing happening here. Rosh as in Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Chodesh, meaning the very head of a month, the head of the year. And the resh, you'll notice, has a bend in it. It looks a little bit bowed, as if it's humble. The word rosh means a poor one, someone who's a little bit bent over. So we have this concept of a little bit of humility coming with the head. Because the head in the body thinks a lot. There's this intellect and this idea of thought that comes with the resh because of the connotation with the head. But sometimes thinking can be a lot, so we need to temper it with a little humility. And that seems to be the trunk of our tree here today, that we have the head, which is the concept of thought, but also the concept of humility coming together to make something stronger. Resh is the letter that rules over the planet Mercury in the sky. So there's also something about communication here, and I think of that in terms of the jackrabbit here. What do you notice about him? He's got these very, very long ears. The resh represents the right ear in the body. So there's something about listening, communication, but particularly listening with your ears, with your right ear. The right ear, which is the ear that maybe hears the good. And that will be our foundation of our trunk here, which will make it solid after we've come from the nothingness into the oneness, into the breath, and then into the head, the beginning, the foundation of communication on some level, and that binary transformation of seed and barrenness. It has that continuum within it about where do we land on this line between barrenness and fertility. And with the jackrabbit here, like I said, a lot of fertility, right? They proliferate. So a new beginning, which has a potential for infinite number of seeds and much, much fertility coming. So that's a wonderful trunk for your tree here. And then we have two branches, and I'm not going to judge which one is whether it's a binary of good and evil, but let's take a look at both of them. Starting on the right, which is the one we pulled out first, we have the letter Lamed. Lamed, which is the letter that begins the word Lev. Lev meaning heart, mind. So we've got the thought and intellect with resh, but we have to include our heart in it as well. Lev is that concept that the heart thinks as much, maybe even more than the mind. That out of our head comes the heart as well. And it is about aspiration, reaching up. You can see it looks a little bit like a seed growing up out of the ground, as well as rooting down into the ground. So that ability to connect the earth with the heavens, with one's heart. Lamed is the first letter of the word, which means teaching and learning, limud v'lamed. So taking in information, listening, and then discerning what is valuable, and maybe turning around and teaching that in order to establish your better understanding of the information. It's about the elevation of the heart toward the divine, education, and it's also the letter that corresponds to the intestines in the body. So that idea of discerning what is nutritious and valuable and what is not, releasing the rest. So that's one of the branches coming off of our trunk of the head of the intellect, is remember the heart as well. Remember to learn what you need to learn and teach what you need to teach in these situations, including your heart. It's not just about thought. Hearts need to be involved as well in order to connect with divinity. And on the other side, our other branch is the letter Mem. Mem is the mother letter of water. And it corresponds to the number 40 in Gematria, which is the number of weeks of gestation in the human body when one is pregnant. And it's got this shape that is reminiscent of a womb, and of course water in the form of amniotic fluid. Again, fertility here, a lot of fertility. Something is gestating. And when we speak of that number 40, it's not just a literal physical manifestation of gestation, but the time of waiting, the 40 years in the wilderness, the 40 days up on Mount Sinai, the 40 days of rain in the Noah story of the flood, being carried in that womb on the water, the wet season, which is the winter in the year, and transformation through water, cleansing like a mikveh. Water is the thing that gives life to the desert. So I love this reading for you, where we have this beginning that seems like it's eternal and nothingness. The chime that says, this is the eternal, this is the Shekhinah here. And it blooms into a sprout of the Aleph, the oneness, the multiplicity within unity, the division between heaven and earth, the balancing. And out of that comes the head, a new beginning, thought, mind, intellect, seed and barrenness. And in this case, seed, it looks like with the jackrabbit, the lamed reaching up with heart toward the divine, and the mem, gestation, a period of waiting where it's time to transform and give birth. So for those of you who chose black-tailed jackrabbit today, this has been your trunk reading. And we'll be doing more readings in the coming days about the trees. May you have a beautiful, beautiful growth spurt right now. And we'll see you here next time. Hello, those of you who chose the 9-banded armadillo. Let me see if I can pronounce the Latin here. Dasypus novemsicus cinctus. Not my forte. So, 9-banded armadillo is a creature that has this hard shell on the outside, right? It can roll up into a small ball to protect itself. And it's mostly a gentle animal, but it does have this protective coating. And I think that that's the case for many animals that are very gentle, as they need some extra armor on the outside. I love that it has 9 bands. That seems significant. The number 9 has got that connotation of birth and gestation, 9 months, and also transformation, as in the 9 shofar blasts that happen in sets of 9 at Rosh Hashanah. There's some kind of protectiveness about that, like he's protected inside of a womb of some kind, perhaps, with this protective shell. So let's see what kind of tree is growing for Armadillo today. Set him off to the side, and we're going to pull out 5 different Hebrunes to represent different parts of this tree. First, we'll pull out roots. What is underneath and supporting you right now? And we have the letter Tav. Next, what is the sprout that's coming up out of that? And we have the letter Nun. Nice. The trunk. What is the strength that's coming out of that sprout? We have the Gimel. And 2 branches. Let's pull out 2 branches today. One branch is the Samech. And the other branch is the Shin. Very nice. Okay, so starting at the root here, we have the letter Tav. And the letter Tav, interestingly, is a seal. It's the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's something that is signing or sealing the deal here. Tav is sometimes seen as not even the last letter, but just the signature of the divine on the alphabet. It's about completion and about rebirth rebirth, reincarnation, something starting over again. It is the final letter of the word emet, meaning truth. So something that is a stamp or a seal on the truth. And it is the day Friday in the week, so the end of the week before we get into Shabbat. It also rules over the moon in the sky, so about transformation of that, the moon coming into its fullness and then returning to its emptiness again. And if you look at the Tav, you can see that it looks a little bit like a Dalet and a Nun together, spelling the word Din, which means judgment. So there's something that's been, the root of your situation is that something has come to an end, or something is coming to an end in order for growth to happen. That there's been some kind of judgment, that a cycle has completed, that there's been some sort of ending of a thing in order for newness to start. The week comes to an end and then it begins again. Tav is also considered the center of the celestial temple in the Sefer Yetzirah. There's this celestial temple which has the 6 sides and Tav in the center. So there's something very sacred about the Tav being that seal. And it also is the binary transformation of sovereignty and slavery. So maybe something has been enslaving and now it's time to claim one's own sovereignty. Maybe we've been curled up inside of our shell and now that's over and we can start to unroll and allow ourselves to be vulnerable again. So that's our root cause right now, is this ending that's come. The ending that symbolizes also new beginnings. And the sprout that's grown up out of that, interestingly, like I said, we had the Dalet and the Nun. Here's the Nun right above it. And Nun is the letter that represents humility. It's the letter that is beginning the word Ne'aman, which means humble. And so it looks like a little bit like a person who's kneeling or has their head bowed, that curling up that happens with the armadillo here. They've gone into a curled up state so that they can protect themselves with their humility. And as something has come to an end, perhaps we've needed to be a little bit humble. Nun is also about loyalty and faithfulness. So having come through this end period with the Tav, maybe it's time to reassess our sprout of humility and loyalty. To what are we loyal? To what are we faithful right now? The first letter of the word Nes is Nun. Nes meaning miracle. So there may be a miracle that's coming here, but it's important to remain humble in order to see that miracle. Nun represents the stomach in the body. So taking time apart maybe to listen to our gut, listen to our stomach. The armadillo has this big shell on its back, but its belly is the vulnerable place. So something about that vulnerability, listening to that part of us that remains vulnerable even when we are protected, even when we have that shell and that armor on. I see Nun as corresponding to the Hermit card in Tarot, the Hermit, which is the one who takes time in solitude in order to find the light and then shares that light with the rest of the world. So Armadillo also reminds me of a hermit because they do tend to be somewhat solitary, especially when they're curled up in their shell. So out of our ending, whatever it is, has come some humility, some time apart to really focus on what is next. And growing up out of that Nun, interestingly, you'll look at how similar these are. We've got the Nun and the Dalet, the Nun, and then the Gimel, which is also a similar shape to a Nun. But the Gimel is all about forward movement. So Nun represents the foundation of locomotion in the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the slow, gradual beginning. Gimel is more about forward movement that's quick. So starting to run, it is a foot or a camel, and this is the position which represents the trunk. What is this? The big, thick foundation, the stability of our situation, and its forward movement, setting off, walking forward with purpose. Some say it's even running forward toward justice. Gimel rules over the planet Jupiter in the sky, and the planet Jupiter is called Tzedek in Hebrew. Tzedek meaning justice. So we're setting off quickly at a quick pace toward justice. Maybe we've been curled up inside of our armadillo shell, and now we're ready to unroll and start to walk away quickly to get to a safe place, to really build our own foundation. Because Gimel is the number 3, and 3 is a very stable number. It's got those 3 legs, like a tripod, much more stable than 2, even sometimes more stable than 4. It's got that triangular shape, which is very, very, very tight and steady shape. So Gimel is about moving forward and harmony and stability. It's perfect for a trunk here. It's the binary transformation of peace and evil, and I think of it in terms of not just peace as an absence of war, but wholeness. Shalom, which means entirety. And so it's a transformation of wholeness and brokenness. Maybe we've been curled up in our shell, afraid of being broken, or maybe we've been broken, and now it's time to step into our wholeness. That thick, strong trunk that's coming up. It's representative of the right eye in the body. So seeing rightly, seeing correctly, using our eye, our good eye, the one that is able to see clearly toward the next thing so that we can aim toward it and step forward off into that direction. So our trunk in our reading today is setting forth. After an ending has occurred and we've spent some time in solitude and humility, it's time to unroll and walk away. And it's interesting, we have 2 letters at the top representing our branches, and one is Shin and the other is Samech. And they both have that S sound. Shin has a sh and or, it could be a s, and Samech has the s sound. So that's really interesting. We'll start with Shin. Shin is the mother letter of fire. So after we've walked forward, we have this fire, the sun, the moon, the stars. This is the mother letter of fire. So that creation element, something that is burning and passionate, like the burning bush, something that's inspiring us to move forward. And it represents change, shini, or return, shuva. And the indwelling presence of the divine feminine, the Shekhinah, is here as well in this letter Shin. It's about transformation through fire, like we've been through a really difficult time perhaps with this ending, and now it's time to transform into something new, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. So as we've come from this difficult time, it's time to light things up and really lean into our fiery self. We have the letter Shin meaning the spirit, and it represents the head and the body, so it's perfect for being at the top of the tree here. Something that is the head and really fiery. And on the other side we have the letter Samech, and Samech is the letter that means to be surrounded. It's a circle, and it reminds me of the armadillo in that you could ball back up if you need to, right? You could roll up into a ball and surround yourself with protection again. The Samech is also about boundaries and thorniness. It did look like a thorn in the Paleo Hebrew, so it has this foundation of agitation in it. And not dissimilar to the Shin in that there's fire here, right? So there's fire, there's agitation, there's thorniness. One is about an elemental thorniness in the fire, and that it could burn you. The other is like a physical thorniness in the terms of like a thorn on a plant or a hedge of thorns. Something protective, though. And so it's interesting that those are the 2 branches coming up out of here. Samekh is the first letter of the word sovev, which means to be surrounded like with family or protection, surrounded like with a big hug. And it's about cycles and seasons as things change, like that moon that is transformed. This is like a wheel that is turning and changing as it goes. So some transformation also happening on the Samekh side. It's the right hand in the body. So using one's hand correctly, having the ability to extend one's right hand. Because boundaries aren't just about keeping others out. They're also about keeping yourself in, and also about permeable boundaries, being able to know and discern who is safe and who is not. So some kind of discernment like the armadillo has here, knowing when it's safe to unroll, to flourish, to show one's fiery self. And we don't have the number 9 in our reading here today. That's the letter Tet, but we do have the Nun, and the Nun is the letter that represents the hermit in tarot, and the hermit card is the number 9 card. So the 9-banded armadillo makes sense that he would link up with the Nun here, especially with that humility, that sequestering oneself in order to discern what needs to happen next. So this is a beautiful reading for a trunk of the tree. We have something has come to an end. Like I said in a previous reading, when you have a seed, that seed needs to end in order to become a sprout. So something has ended in order to make room for growth. And out of that growth has come this time of humility, this time of being, like a sprout, hunched over a little bit, protected a little bit, taking time to start slowly in that locomotion. And then as it reaches up into the trunk, it becomes more quick. That gimel, stepping forward, moving ahead quickly toward justice, being able to unroll and walk away from something that maybe hasn't served you because it had to come to an end. And then out of that comes 2 branches, one which is fire, and the head in the body, and passion, maybe even anger, but transformation through fire of some sort. Some kind of change is happening here. And on the other side, we have Samekh, which is, again, that ability to protect, setting up good boundaries, permeable boundaries, maybe having a little bit of agitation to know when is it okay to walk away and when is it necessary to protect. And both of those things are necessary for a strong, strong growth. So for those of you who chose the 9-banded armadillo today, this has been your reading for the trunk of your tree. Hope you enjoyed it. There'll be more readings coming up on the subject of trees this month. I hope you like and subscribe, and I will look forward to seeing you here next time.